I'm attorney Jason Heinze, CEO of Claim Data Software and host of the Good Fight podcast. For this episode, I fumbled the introduction of attorney Zachary Ballin so very badly that I'm recording it here again and appending it prior to the episode. Attorney Zachary Ballin has spent a lifetime dedicated to legal training and trial excellence, from his formative years working at Ballin Associates to founding and co-captaining his high school mock trial team to the state championship. To his college studies in philosophy, attorney Ballin has consistently demonstrated a serious intellect and a deep understanding of the intricacies of the legal system. You'll definitely see his background in philosophy on display in this episode. His academic excellence, which culminated in the Sandra Day O'Connor Scholarship to New England Law Boston, where he graduated cum laude, speaks volumes to his dedication and passion for his work. Licensed to practice in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, attorney Ballin has become a fixture of the legal community, exemplified by his membership in the Massachusetts Academy of Trial Attorneys, the Mass Bar Association, the Norfolk Bar Association, and the Rhode Island Bar Association. Notably, attorney Ballin's professional journey has been punctuated by a series of 6- and 7-figure jury verdicts. Not at all surprising to me. Attorney Ballin takes on challenging cases and takes them to verdict whenever necessary, often for first responders injured in the line of duty. Attorney Ballin views his work on behalf of those who serve as the privilege of his career, and he is unwavering in his tenacity on their behalf. Attorney Zachary Ballin has been consistently selected to Massachusetts Super Lawyers Rising Stars and to the National Trial Lawyers Top 100. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. I had an amazing time speaking with Zach, and I think you're going to love what he has to say. He brings so much dedication, so much intelligence to his cases, to his clients, and it was just such a pleasure to speak with him. Here you go.
All right. Well, I'm, as you know, Jason Heinze here with another episode of the Good Fight podcast. Very thrilled to have my guest today, Zach Ballin is the last name. Yes, sir?
Depends who you ask. It's Ballin, but yeah, I'd like to pronounce it Ballin. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm off to a great start then. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
So Zach, we were talking a little bit off camera, and as I said, super excited to be chatting with you today. So, there are a couple of things in particular that I wanted to hit with you. So you mentioned that your practice has a really interesting focus, or kind of a niche practice area. So that was one of the things. And then the other one would be talking about your position as second generation law firm or second generation lawyer in your family's firm. So where do you want to take us first?
I kind of go a little bit hand in hand, I guess. Back in the 80s, my dad started the firm, and he kind of fell into working with first responders. So he had a police officer come into his office who had been, he'd gone to see however many lawyers already to ask him if he could bring a claim for the injuries he suffered when someone hurt him when he was working as a police officer. And he'd been told, no, we can't do that. You're a police officer. It's part of the job. You can't make a claim. And then he figured it out and he made the claim, was successful for that officer. And that's really the genesis of how 40 years later, sort of a huge part of our practice is working with first responders, primarily police officers, injured, certainly off duty, but a lot of what we do is on duty injuries to police officers and personal injury claims, not workers' comp or anything like that, but actually going after the bad guys or corporations or whoever it is that injures the officer.
Okay, so you're going to have to unpack that a little bit for me, because I would have thought that a lot of those sort of workplace claims would have been handled by the workers' comp regime for the state, and that the availability to recover in tort would be quite limited.
So it differs state to state, but in Massachusetts, there's, everyone kind of maybe remembers the firefighter rule from law school. So that's gone in Massachusetts. It was legislated out of the laws here. So simply put, if you're a police officer in Massachusetts, you have the same rights as anybody else if you're injured, meaning, we like to, just because you put on a badge doesn't mean you lose any rights. So that means no one has the right to hurt you if you're a police officer. And that could be anything as typical as a car accident on duty in a police cruiser, or working as a pedestrian standing on the road directing traffic. It could be being injured by construction equipment at a construction project where they're directing traffic around the construction project, or keeping safe around that. Or really, we get into some wild stories where we have, you name it, someone flees the scene, an officer is injured chasing them. It could be an officer responds to something really volatile. Like this happens all the time where, there's a domestic dispute at a home, officer responds, now all of a sudden the officer is entangled with a guy or gal and they get hurt, or anything up to shootings, you name it. It's hard work. We have to get creative, and there's oftentimes as much work involved in finding insurance that will cover the incident as there is in actually pursuing the claim. But that's the second generation piece. That's how I grew up. It was, we're not advertising everywhere, so the cases we have, we're going to work really hard on them. And a lot of times that means working for a long time, doing the hard work and finding whatever we can to do for these officers who are pretty remarkable people. So that's really gratifying about the job, and something that makes it really, really worthwhile.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot for me to a lot for me to unpack there, but I think in terms of what you mentioned about how gratifying this work must be, in terms of working with police officers, first responders, that has to. I'm guessing that you, at the end of the week, even if it's been a long week, you can usually feel pretty good about what you're working on.
Hopefully, the reality is we're pretty blessed to have that population, as clients. Not everyone's the same. Of course, there's variety. Yeah, I always say there's varying qualities in all fields. That's certainly true of attorneys. It's true of everybody. But the people that we get to work with in law enforcement, it's so unusual for them to have lawyers on their side, where there's so oftentimes they're getting picked apart and they're getting second guessed at every turn. In a split second, their life is on the line. They've got to make these incredibly difficult decisions. And then they spend the next 6 months with someone coming into court and questioning everything they did and whether they followed every proper procedure, which is fine. That's the legal system. But so to have a lawyer like us come in and say, all right, we've got your back. We understand what you did. We've got the experts lined up to support it. We know exactly how to work through this. Then they're still skeptical. We got to earn their trust. But by now, when they're coming to us, a lot of times they've heard from, half a dozen other officers who say, hey, you got to call Ballin. They did great work for me, or this person or that person. And then, there's just nothing more gratifying than delivering the check. And not just because it's money, but because it's a conclusion. It's a recognition that they were in the right. They followed the protocols, and unfortunately, they suffer for it, and they need to be compensated. I think the piece that gets lost on people is that they don't understand how challenging that job is. You have, it's really easy to say police officers, first responders are heroes, but people don't really think about what that means and how incredibly challenging that job is. And then certainly in the media, and on a day in and day out basis, police just get picked apart. When was the last time you heard a positive story about a police officer? It's probably rare, if ever.
Yeah.
But so for them to call somebody that is actually supportive of them, is completely on their side, not for any political reason, but just because they're good people and they have valid claims and they have the right to be compensated, and they should be compensated. And it's going to work with the highest integrity. It's almost like shocking to them when it works out, but it does work out all the time. So that is gratifying.
So that reminds me, just what you mentioned about that's the portrayal of particularly law enforcement in the media. And I was in my backyard in Portland one time, and at the time, our fence was against this parking lot, and it was a Rite Aid parking lot, and there was just all types of illicit activity was happening in that parking lot. But one time I overheard a police officer. It was the strangest thing. I was raking leaves, and I just hear on the other side of the fence this police officer talking to a man who had maybe injured himself or was like engaging in some kind of self-harm. And it was just such a humane, the way that he addressed this man and that kind of compassion that he showed him, and just the kind of dialogue he had with him to kind of de-escalate him and get him to to stop engaging in this self-harming behavior. It really opened my eyes to just what it must be like to have to, if that's your day in and day out. It really was, as I say, an eye opener for me. And I'm sure you have, dozens of stories of like things that you've heard of.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's exactly right. I mean, realistically, even besides like the stories, I think the piece that people miss is, you may hear some some really difficult situation in the news involving a police officer, and it's whatever's going on with those situations. It's just not the day-to-day and lived experience of the millions of other police officers in the country. And the reality is, it's just it doesn't even make sense to think of it that way when you consider every police officer. They're just human beings, right? Like that officer who was in the Rite Aid parking lot, like it's a person with a family, with a job, who's trying to, get home, thinking about what's for dinner. Like the last thing they want to do is maybe end up in the hospital instead of going home to their family, right? They have all the same issues of daycare and car payments and a problem with their hot water heater and whatever else. And the fact that they put on a uniform, which at the end of the day, it's just a different outfit than you or I may put on. It doesn't make them any less susceptible to harm. It doesn't make them any less likely. He also knows if he tussles with this person and hits the pavement, he may have shoulder surgery, right? Like it's the last thing any of them want. The same way you and I wouldn't want to get in a fight behind the Rite Aid. Are they trained for it? Sure, but that doesn't mean they want to do it. And on top of that, they have to go through, reviews if anything happens. Anytime they use force, all of a sudden there's extra documentation that's going to be reviewed. If you're really careful about all that. So what you just described is exactly the type of stuff that happens nonstop, and just of course no one hears about it because there's nothing newsworthy. Newsworthy, because what newsworthy means is something salacious and it's going to really get your heart going. So who's going to write a story about and I'm sure that happened thousands of times today across the country. No one would ever hear about that. But there's all these kind of remarkable facts around that job that no one knows about. And to me, it really is remarkable. I didn't grow up with police officers in my family or anything like that. And so I didn't know about any of this until I started working closely with them. But I mean, just consider the fact that, like in Massachusetts, we have a law called the heart bill, which says if you're a police officer and you're diagnosed with a heart condition, it's presumed to be from the job. Your job is so stressful, it's so intense that when you are diagnosed perhaps with a cardiac issue that may very well claim your life, probably it's one of the leading causes of death of men, certainly over a certain age. That disease is so likely to become you based on how intense this job is. It's presumed that you got it from the job. And now you may think, well, how's that possible? Like, why would that happen? Then you have to think about what the day in and day out life is like. So imagine you're a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old man or woman. You go, maybe probably military, you have that background, or college, whatever it is, police academy, you get on the job. All right. What happens next, right? There's horrible tragedies that don't make the news all the time. And they're not newsworthy because it's just the things that happen in life that no one wants to talk about because they're so terrible that of course we don't want to talk about it. But somewhere out there today, I'm sure some child died. Not necessarily because anyone hurt the child or anything, but just something bad happened. There was some terrible accident. There was a pool door left open, or who knows what. Well, you call 911. And who shows up? Someone with, police academy training, any training that you have. I mean, nothing trains you for how to deal with that image being left in your head for the rest of your life. And then the next time that there's a car crash and there's a woman with a missing leg, you can't do anything, but they call 911. Of course they call 911, or their car automatically calls 911. So you respond. And these types of things that build up and build up and build up and build up, And it's so bad that we have to pass a law that says if and when you contract a heart disease, it must be job related, because that's how bad, how intense this job is. But people sign up for it. And then you think, okay, well, hey, I heard these stories that there's these sort of occasionally something questionable happens. All right, but on the flip side of that, you have these thousands, men and women, who are definitely not looking for fame and fortune to sign up for the police academy, right? I mean, they know that's not happening. They know they're going to be questioned. They know they're going to be maligned, and they know they're going to very likely develop heart disease. And here they go and they take the job. It's a remarkable human being that's called to that kind of service. That's what I mean by these people are heroes, and it's the pride of our firm and my career to get to represent them. So for us, yeah, that's a long answer, but yeah, it is very gratifying. And yeah, it doesn't get old, because it's just, I know that I understand it in a way that's different than what you would normally see.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you mentioned that you don't come from a family of police officers. And you also mentioned about the understandable skepticism that so many of these officers would tend to approach you with, right? Given their previous experience with lawyers. So I'm curious, what is it like to kind of break down that association or build that trust? I'm curious to hear. I mean, I'm guessing you don't have a formula or like a one size fits all, but maybe you do, and I'm curious.
Well, it always starts the same way, because I think, one of the biggest misconceptions with personal injuries, I'm varying qualities in all fields. Perhaps there are lawyers who are going the other way on this, but people imagine that you want to embellish what's happening to you, and that's how you have a great claim or something like that. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because the truth will set you free. I mean, that's as the strong a reality as anything. And it kind of starts with police officers of making that point, because the conversation always goes kind of the same way. It's like, well, I never thought I would bring a claim. I'm not that kind of person. It's not what I'm about. And it goes back to that point about these are people called to service. Like, they really, truly, deep in their soul, are just looking to help other people. And what lights them up and brings them joy is truly like helping that guy behind the right aid. Like, hey, I get to go home and say, I saved a life today. I helped that person stop doing what they were doing. I prevented this drunk husband from who knows what he would have done with the guns in his home if we hadn't got there in time. I jumped into the pond when the car went into it and got the kid out of the vehicle. I mean, all these things. And it's the antithesis of who they are to take. And so the idea of saying, hey, I'm going to bring a personal injury claim feels very odd. So they didn't sign up for the job for something like that. They signed up to give. But then the reality sets in where I'm out of work. And there's a huge financial reality for police officers, certainly here in Massachusetts, where oftentimes a huge portion of their income is is uncompensated while they're out of work, because it's extra work that they do. And there's another harsh reality to, certainly life in Massachusetts, and I'm sure it's similar around the country, where, again, here's these people that are signing up for what seems to someone who is a money motivated person would be just a unbelievable sacrifice, to say, I'm going to be willing to lay down my life for a stranger who may be at best indifferent to me, if not dislike me. And not only that, I'm going to do it in a town that doesn't pay me enough to live in it. Right. So certainly in Massachusetts, I mean, you go to work in a lot of the towns there, the police salary, I mean, it really does not pay someone enough to, I mean, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home in a lot of these towns, but these salaries certainly oftentimes are not. So they're working all the extra time that they can a lot of the times. And even then, still very challenging, if at all, not even possible, to buy a home in these towns. Yet they're working there day in and day out, willing to sacrifice themselves for the residents. And so what we just explained is, look, we're the last people that are ever going to tell you to do something that, is not appropriate. we have no interest in that. You go back to work as soon as you can. As soon as you're medically able to do that, you do it. We're not looking to make anyone do anything other than the truth. And then we just get you what's reasonably there. And then the other piece of it is 40 years of word of mouth. It's pretty powerful. I mean, let's be honest. So when 3 people from your own department say call Ballin, it's a powerful motivator, that's for sure. And it gives us a lot of credibility. And then it's just talking from that point of authority and understanding all those kind of ins and outs.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. No, I think, 40, 40 years of word of mouth certainly doesn't hurt.
Right.
That's, yeah. And so talking about that, you're carrying on the legacy that your father began. Are there particular challenges that you feel like you face for that reason? I think a lot of people would say it's easier to step into the shoes of a practice that's already up and running. But then I've also talked to people who are like, gosh, it would be easier to start things new rather than try to change things that then change the status quo.
Well, I would absolutely. I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. There's no question about that. I've always looked at it with everything in my life in terms of, I've been given a great opportunity. The question is, what do you do with it, right? It opens the door, but it doesn't do the work for you. So the challenging part becomes, we're not starting with a clean chessboard, right? There's a lot of pieces that are in place that have been there for a long time. So change is a challenge, but that's where we're working our way through it. It's been very positive. We've seen a lot of very positive change. I think he has immense strengths that he continues to bring to the business, and I have complementary strengths in a lot of ways. And together we've been able to make a lot of really important progress, certainly in the last year or so, where he was really strong, making sure we're going to handle cases a certain way. He taught that to me. And that, like I said earlier, comes down to, we're not looking to be everyone, we're not looking to be the same thing for everybody. We're looking to do really hard work for our clients and be really strong for law enforcement, not just law enforcement, represent everybody in the community. But making sure now we can build in the systems in place to ensure that every client that ever comes to our firm gets that same level of care, no matter where they end up. That's the new challenge now, is kind of taking everything that he kind of built and now making sure we systematize it and organize it to ensure that as we grow, we're able to maintain that same high level.
I'm curious, what would you mind sharing? Because part of what I like to do with these calls is just share the kind of collective intelligence of all the practitioners that I'm speaking with, so that if there's maybe particularly people who are earlier on in their career who are looking to do things the right way the first time, as opposed to the way that I often operate, like, are there any lessons about that process of systematization, organization that you want to share?
I think the biggest thing has been really to just start with the end in mind, right? I mean, the goal is not growth for growth's sake. The goal is not growth just for never ending, conquering of the world or something like that. We have a destination in mind, right? If we're here, we're not trying to just go through the roof. We're looking to get up a level. And the reason that we want to do that is because we need to, the metrics of a personal injury firm are important. You have to operate in a way to free yourself financially from any one case. And in order to do that, you have to be very diligent with ratios and expense ratios and kind of how you handle things, because no attorney can be completely free to take the risk they need to on a case until you can lose any case. Not that you want to lose any case, of course, but you have to be able to. And the reason that's so important is because the truth of the matter is, no serious case is going to get to its full potential until you're in trial or at the doorstep. And you can't do that if you're watching, the bills every month. So in order to to really have the freedom to take the swings that you need to take, you have to organize yourself in such a way that you're in a really strong position, so that if you do go down, God forbid, on something really serious, you survive it, and you'll live to see another day. But hopefully you don't. But that's how you kind of build up the strength to get to the right result on all those cases. In terms of building that out, it's a lot of technology. I mean, I absorb everything. I'm constantly reading and listening and learning. And there's a million things that go into it. But it's trying to build out the system. This year, a huge change for us was just going from an old practice management software to a new one. And within that, there's a lot of automation that's built in. So we can just kind of build into that system, and just constantly refining it now. Well, okay, for instance, if we're going to have a threshold built in to say, all right, if your case is going to resolve for X amount, you've got to have it reviewed. Okay, so now we have some oversight into how we're handling cases. We can just build that right into the software that says, is this case at this threshold or not? If it is, you have to go and get this thing reviewed, so that we can make sure that across the firm we have see-through into what's going on with these types of cases.
Got it. Do you mind sharing which practice management tool you're using, or?
No, it's not a secret. I mean, we went with FileVine. There's a lot of good ones, but that was the one I think it made sense for us in terms of cost and what it would take to get it up and running and what it can do.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think building in those kinds of automations in particular, so that they work with your firm's, I guess, existing workflows or existing priorities. I think that's a big unlock for a lot of firms.
That's been one of the best pieces, really, is just to be able to have, it could just goes by phases of a case, and then you can just attach task flows to each phase. So as someone would, if a client is done with their treatment, they go into a record and bill collection phase. Well, you just have tasks that start at that phase. You have checklists to make sure things don't get missed. And you just keep doing that at each phase of the case. You build right into the system a task that pops up that says, okay, we're now at this phase. This is what you got to do.
Got it.
Which I think is a lot more straightforward than, here's a 50-page manual to refer to as you work.
Right. And I'm curious, what was that? And I know we're getting into the weeds here on FileVine. FileVine has no has no affiliation with the podcast, but I know these are the things that attorneys who are in your shoes thinking of switching or making that decision are thinking about. I mean, were you making these customizations as part of the onboarding process, or are these things that you've done subsequently, just as you've learned more about the system and how to fine tune it for your practice?
Both. So we had a third-party company that helped us with the onboarding, and they built out some of it. But then once we've started using it, it's like, okay, well, why don't we add this here and add this here? And so both, for sure.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, the more we could think through up front, they did a lot of it. And then it's that, and then the ability to report out of it is just awesome. So to, be able to say, all right, show me all the cases that are like this. And then, the management oversight it's helped quite a lot.
Okay. That is great. And also, the switch from one practice management system to another is a huge undertaking. So congrats for crossing that off your list. That must feel good.
It does. I think the biggest thing really, the toll on staff is a lot. It's almost like learning a new language while you're working. So that's a lot. So kudos to them for helping us get through it. But yeah, for anyone who's going to switch, it's definitely plan your thank yous in advance. That's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. No. Whenever an attorney tells me that they're thinking of switching practice management systems, I always give them my condolences, because I know it's what can be such a painful process. So you mentioned about before we started recording, you talked about what you see as a huge divide amongst personal injury or within personal injury practices, and it's something that I've come across from time to time, but I'd love to hear your take on that again. or sort of more in depth?
Yeah, I think the more that I learn about the landscape of personal injury and this kind of litigation practice and practices that don't litigate and try cases as often, I think the part that's really fascinating about it kind of dovetails in with the marketing piece, like we were talking about, where you have, we've started digital marketing more just in the last year, and we've had some early success, luckily enough. But the thing that's been kind of fascinating about that is it's pretty surprising how quickly someone will, click on your website and then sign up with your firm. And you can see with call tracking and all this technology now where people are going online and how they're getting to you. And at first is I'm thinking, okay, it's kind of unbelievable how little people research, because I research to death before I do anything, but how little they'll research and then sign up with you. But then the flip side of that becomes, well, what else are they supposed to do, right? I mean, if you're someone who doesn't have a lawyer in your circle and you don't know somebody that you trust to go to, and you go online or you drive down the road and you see billboards or you watch TV and you see an ad, how can you possibly differentiate between the lawyers that are out there, right? I mean, every billboard is basically, some white guy's face and a repeating phone number. You go on every website, it's again, some guy or gal's, usually guy's face. And then a bunch of awards that are of varying realistic, meaning. Everyone has represented this many clients and recovered this much money. How do they differentiate? I mean, everyone looks basically exactly the same. The problem becomes, there are a lot of those clients that end up at certain firms, and that's a lot of them. They're not litigating cases. A lot of them aren't actual law firms, right? I mean, a lot of them are just referring clients elsewhere, which is fine. It's part of the practice. But the issue is, realistically, even within firms that do try cases, a lot of lawyers of those firms don't. And the vast, vast, vast majority of cases, of course, do settle. The problem is, if you have a case that's a serious case that actually should be litigated and should be taken, if not to trial, but darn close to get full value, you just have no chance of receiving that if you're at a certain firm or with a certain attorney. It's just never going to happen, because it's just not how they practice. Because when you really think about the incentives in this business, no client knows what their case is worth. I mean, it's so debatable, and anyone can settle $1 million case for 300 grand and post, a 1/3 fee on that. And that's a lot of money. On top of that, you have lawyers who are incentivized to get their fees done because they're going to get a percentage of the fee. And everyone has sort of their, whatever that comfortable threshold is they're trying to hit. Maybe you have your bills that hey, I got to earn X to kind of pay my bills. And a certain amount of X is based on my performance. Well, here's this case, here's this offer, here's this percentage that will go on the spreadsheet, and now my bills will be covered. That's a lot of pressure. Yeah. And there aren't a lot of lawyers who will actually push past that and fight and are hungry enough to actually do what's right for the client, or have the integrity because it's debatable, right? I mean, every case is debatable. Every case has challenges. And do you see those challenges as overcomable? And are you willing to do the work to overcome them? Because keep in mind, you get that $300,000 offer and you're thinking, okay, maybe there's some chance I can get $1 million verdict. But if you're ever going to get it, it's going to be maybe a year, 2 years away. And it's going to be 20x the amount of work versus just signing some papers and being done, cashing a check. It's a difficult incentive structure in personal injury to get the right results. And that's why it's so critical to have the right attorneys working with you as someone, running a law firm. That means everything. And that's why it's so critical to me in building this firm and keeping, it going in the right direction, that we have the right systems in place and the right people in place, that we're not going to be, we can't change what's going on outside this firm, but we absolutely can change and handle appropriately what's going on inside the firm to make sure that that never happens to one of our clients. And I just feel for the people that have no clue, because you never figure that out. You could research forever online and probably never know to distinguish that. I mean, unless How many people are educated to the point to understand that and then actually go searching for a lawyer with jury verdict results or something of that nature? Nobody.
Yeah. No, and I think it's even a little worse than maybe you portrayed in terms of the kind of perverse incentives, right? But it's like,
Yeah.
it's not only am I foregoing this certain payment now for 20 times the work, but I also might do 20 times the work and walk away with nothing.
Totally.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's and then I think in terms of the it's interesting because as I've learned more about about marketing and advertising through operating claim data, like there's this kind of, I think, conventional knowledge or conventional wisdom now that this is a different era, right? Customers have, as opposed to in the past when the salespeople had all the information. Well, now consumers have all the information, and you and they'll decide accordingly. But I think this kind of information asymmetry still is very much alive and well,
Massive.
right? In
Massive.
terms of people who are looking to consume legal services. And I guess I hadn't thought about that problem you described in terms of the incentives or the perverse incentives for settlement as opposed to trial, and also the way that even anyone could sort of given that the outcomes are never certain, that you could kind of shrug off that sort of less than totally ethical standpoint by just saying, well, we don't know if it would have gone for 1 million. Maybe 300 is the best they were going to do, right?
Of course. But that's why, again, it's so critical. The firm has to be set up right. The incentives for the lawyers have to be set up right. The lawyers have to be the right people. I mean, it's a complex structure to have it done the right way. That's what we can control. The outside world's the outside world. I don't know what would even educate the consumer. Even if you put on your website, we try this many cases, we do this. What does that mean to somebody else? They don't, it's tough. But in 2025 and going forward, you just do what's right in-house. You can control your own house, and that's all we can do. But yeah, it's a wild place out there. That's for sure.
Man, I mean, I don't know. Not to overstate the importance of my role here today, but I think that just kind of laying that out on your website somewhere, I mean, truly, just so that people, because I think it's too easy to be, I think, taken in by some of these advertisements of a settlement of this of so it's a $10 million settlement. Well, maybe, and what you're saying is, well, yeah, it could have been a $30 million judgment, but they but they just called it in, mailed it in.
Exactly. And the only way to know it's having the integrity to, you have to fight your own, the incentives in yourself too, right? I mean, that's a battle that everyone has to get set up right. And that's why for us, this is it's so foundational for figuring out who you are and who the business is first. And it has to stem from that, or else it's impossible. Because if it's playing in the back of your head, what it means for you, you got to get yourself out of the way, right? So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, which goes back to what you were saying earlier about the need to have your kind of financial affairs in order, so that when when you're at that case needing to take that big swing, you're obviously you're hoping for the best, but you're not kind of looking over your shoulder, second guessing. I think. Sorry, I'm not speaking as eloquently as you did, but I think that you're able to do that. Get your affairs in order so that you can do what you're talking about is doing what's right for the client, right?
Yeah, and this is where I see, like, I'm almost be curious, like a lot of these, firms that I see that it's just growth at all costs. Well, one of those costs is integrity and doing work the right way, right? Where if you take every dollar and all you do is buy as much advertising as you possibly can, or whatever you're doing, and not everyone's in that camp. I mean, I know some firms who are absolutely doing it the right way. We're certainly not the only ones, but there's people out there where if you have to keep things in the right framework, right? That's the point. You can't just be all in on one thing, or you're just going to be in that same trap again.
Yep. Well, you mentioned just before I was just before I was trying to repeat what you said, but not as eloquently. You had said about finding I think your firm's foundation or your own foundation in terms of what's really driving you. I think you've talked about that a little bit over the course of the conversation, but I kind of wonder if I put you on the spot and say, Zach, what's driving your firm? What's driving you? How would you answer that?
For me, the most meaningful experiences have come in trial. I mean, those moments are just incredible. I sometimes like to joke, like I started a mock trial team in high school. That's when I sort of found, hey, this is the thing that I'm really good at and that I enjoy. And it's like I got to go pro in the thing I actually did in high school. So, but in order to do that the right way, that's why we got to set this up right. Besides what animates me, I mean, it's getting to do the job that when I get to do the job the way I want to do it, I love it. And that's why I've been working so dang hard to get this firm set up the right way so that we can operate that way and I can operate that way. Because there's so much joy in, I mean, just to look in a client's face when they've waited years and the verdict comes in and it's so vindicating. I always say there's multiple facets to justice. The money is not just a dollar amount that goes in the bank. The money is recognition. The money is validation. The money is meaning. It's like Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Well, that's money justice for injuries, right? Maybe it's the worst form of compensation except for all the others, right? It replaced eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. And the thing that people miss about it is it goes all the way back to indigenous societies, that they always had mechanisms to compensate someone for wrongdoing, because otherwise you have someone who's just destroyed and there's no recognition, there's no accountability, there's no comeuppance, the other shoe never drops. And they're just left to suffer. And so we never hear from people like, oh my God, I'm so happy I got the money, I got X, Y, Z. Of course, it means a lot to someone who's lost a career or whatever has happened to them. But the ability to move on, right? That closure to this horrible chapter of their life, the pressure off the shoulders, the ability to breathe easier, and more simply just find what the next chapter is for them and move on with their lives. I mean, it's unbelievable. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and there's a book I love called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I recommend it a lot to clients who've gone through these things. And that's kind of what I love about the job. It's like you get to have this deep relationship with somebody while you're also getting to fight for them and do this incredible thing it's not going to make it better, of course. I mean, I don't have the power of healing, but we can make it better legally, and that makes it better psychically, because that is what happens. They do find some closure, and especially for like I said, we represent everybody, but for our police clients, when the defense is always the same. It's, oh, our guy didn't hurt the cop. The cop was brutalized this guy for no reason, despite what the witnesses say, of course. And then they finally get a result that says, no, that's the BS we've all known it was from day one. You are a good person. You were in the right. You did nothing wrong, and you're completely vindicated. It means everything. So those are the moments that are just incredible.
Wow. It's interesting that you mention Frankl's book, right? Because it's a book that I love, and I've recommended it to a couple of clients over the years. And more and more, I'm interested in this idea that clients don't come to attorneys like yourself when things are going well, right? They're really coming at an extremely bad time, maybe an extremely bad, if not the worst time of their life.
Yeah, right.
Right. So that potential for the attorney and the attorney-client relationship, or the legal team-client relationship, to be I don't know, to help them find resilience, to help them, have post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress, perhaps. And I think Frankel fits in there. Do you tend to find that message of a man's search for meaning, do you find that resonates with clients? I mean, are you talking about that with them kind of explicitly, or how do these more kind of psychical, like spiritual things come up?
Because look, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, these relationships span years. I have so many clients who have my cell phone number, and we are still in communication. And I had plenty of clients say, like, "Hey, I'm glad my case is over. I'll miss talking to you." And I tell them, I'm like, "You can call me. It's not. I understand that it's not over. Your life, what you're going through is not over because your case is over." And it comes up because, especially for, with someone who's lost a career, it's such a big loss. It's such a big deal, especially for, all of our clients, but law enforcement. If you think about, again, like law enforcement, I mean, their department it's a community, it's a family for so many of them. I mean, they are just to make ends meet. They are working 80, 90, 100 hours a week. They have families. A lot of times a man and, a married couple are, one's in law enforcement. Maybe they're both in law enforcement. One works the day, one works the night shifts. They can work with the kids on the off. I mean, it's it's a busy life. And you had military service before that, where who knows what you went through. I mean, I've had clients who say, "Zach, this is unbelievable. I got blown up 4 times in Afghanistan. I had no injuries. Now, bang, this freaking drunk driver rear ends me. I'm stopped at a red light in a town in Massachusetts, and now my career is blown up." That's life. I mean, it's not fair. That's what happens. And you got to reckon with that. And you got to reckon with the fact that you maybe only want to do one thing since you were a kid. You got to do it. Yeah, you joined the military, you joined the law enforcement, and now bang, it's gone. Okay. Your whole community's gone. The people around you, you're not around them every day. You're home. You're on the couch. You can't move. You're everything that makes you calm and happy, right? Exercise, getting outside, being around people, helping people, having fulfillment, doing your job, gone. What's it replaced with? The stuff that makes you unhappy. You're sedentary. You can't move around a lot because you're injured. You can't exercise. Maybe you're rehabbing some injured body part or whatever. That's a recipe for depression. Yep. And inevitably, when you get there, you're calling frustrated. And usually people are shocked because they email me and they hear back in like a second. I mean, no one ever waits more than 24 hours to hear back from me as a client. Or I'm right on the phone, and we'll be on the phone. These phone calls will be 40, it's like an hour, whatever it takes. But we're talking through that reality. And usually it gets down to they're grappling with, well, do I really have to think about losing this thing that's my whole identity? A lot of times, like in closing arguments, I've asked the jury the kind of rhetorical question, like, well, why is it when we meet someone, the first thing we ask them is, what do you do for a living? Right? People say in America, we're too focused on work, but that's our identity. I mean, that's who we are. It tells you so much about the person. And to lose that is to lose a huge chunk of how you see yourself and how you want other people to perceive you. And it's not just a loss of income. I mean, all of a sudden, it's this whole thing that I spent my life creating is gone. This thing that my spouse is proud to see me come home from. Now they don't see me leave. They just see me, they wake up, they go to work, I'm in the same spot they left. And that's a tough sell to the spouse, right? But not through your own fault. It's reality. And not that they should feel bad about it, but that's how it happens. So those conversations, I think it's just also who I am, right? I mean, I'm not going to take that call and say, hey, I'm your lawyer, not your therapist, goodbye, right? I mean, I'm going to talk through it with people. And it's a big part too of understanding their story to make sure that I can portray it accurately and fulfill my obligation the way I see it to make sure that I completely understand what they're going through. And then, of course, I'm a human being and I care about them. And I want to make sure if there's something I think I can offer them to help, of course, I'm going to do that. And, I haven't been through the same thing they're going through, but I've lived a life. Life is hard under the best of circumstances at times, right? So, Man's Search for Me, I just think is a tremendous book, and you can pick up a copy for like $10 on Amazon. So I've given them out plenty of times to people, and if they read it, they read it. They don't read it, they don't read it. But they appreciate the gesture at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I have much to add to that, Zach. That was really, really so eloquent. And man, I think your clients are really lucky to have you in their corner.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I think we're little over an hour, and I know that with all the personal attention you're giving your clients, you probably don't have too much more to give to me. But was there any, like, is there anything else that that you want to add to what we've already discussed?
No, this has been fun. It's been great. I appreciate you having me. Great to meet you. And yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, listen, it was my pleasure. Really, really such a pleasure to hear you. We covered a lot of ground, from Churchill to Frankel to the indigenous, indigenous
Culture is something.
help me out here. Yeah, there we go. So no, this is really wide ranging, and definitely appears to have taxed my ability to even articulate. So yeah, seriously, Zach, thanks so much.
Anytime. All right, take care, Jason.
All right, take care.